Welcome back to the second part of my interview with Kenneth O'Keefe. Ken is an uncompromising anti-war activist, pro-Palestinian advocate, and arguably one of the world's most polarizing figures. If you haven't watched the first part yet, I recommend giving it a try, as it not only sets the groundwork for the deeper discussions we're having today, but it also tells you how to navigate the interview and Ken's complex persona. In this segment, we are continuing our exploration of a number of contentious topics, from state terrorism, an Israeli attack on a US warship, Israel's Hannibal doctrine, and one or two other topics that might surprise you. So, as we proceed, please keep the often nuanced and controversial nature of such discussions in mind. The aim here is not to offend, but to understand. And now let's rejoin our dialogue with Kenneth O'Keefe. You just said something. So we have one more topic on your CV that I really would like to cover. That's the March of Return. But we come to that in a second, because you just said something that triggered a thought. The reason that we are sitting here basically is a resurfaced interview that you gave, where you very vocal in terms of what you would do if, for example, a foreign power from the other side of the world invades America or Ireland. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll let you elaborate. You do know which interview I'm referring to, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have said it in more than one interview, but that's the one that most people know, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe tell us a bit the context about this interview, and then maybe also elaborate on your point of view that you were there.
That's a good question. And what I did was, everybody who has ever mentioned Hamas, and only recently have we started to see this change just a bit, actually substantially. Hamas terrorist, that's it, period, end of story, no conversation.
It's even wider than that. Palestinian is like synonymous with terrorism.
Yes,
yeah.
The Irish were too. So again, this is personal. Despite the Yank accent, I am a Celt. My grandmother was born and raised in Ireland. I'm Irish, I'm a Celt. We're always up for a scrap. And we don't like bullies. So, with regard to, I knew, like, in terms of PR and raising awareness, that this was a great achievement. Sadly, it has not yet, to this day, resulted in the breaking of that blockade.
But the context of this interview was?
The point that I was making there is that, very common saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Many who and I made the point, so if we look at the founding fathers of America, they're heroes to Americans. But what were they to King George III? What were they to the British Empire? Were they heroes? No, they were terrorists. They were the terrorists of their day. They involved in violent resistance against a non-representative government halfway across the ocean there, with taxes that don't represent the will of the people there, so they resisted with violence. Are they terrorists? Oh, and let's look at the Palestinians. So they are dispossessed of most of their nation, historic Palestine. They're pushed to the margins. They're completely occupied in the West Bank. And in Gaza, they're in a concentration camp. Are we to believe that these people are supposed to lie down and just accept their own demise? Or do we resist? If Americans were treated in such a way, would we consider them terrorists if they lashed out with violence in whatever form? No, of course not. What happens when we drop bombs, like carpet bombing Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, Iraq? What do we call that? Collateral damage? No, that's terrorism, is what it is. It's predictable loss of life. It terrorizes the people. I know children in Gaza, parents who've told me, they hear a helicopter, to understand. If we hear a helicopter fly overhead, kids hear, they're like, oh, look at the helicopter. In Gaza, when they hear a jet or a helicopter, they're getting flashbacks. They're getting flashbacks to bombs that have dropped, people who've been blown apart, blood spilled, and the idea maybe that it's going to come, it's going to hit their building. They wet their beds, they're panicky, they're freaking out, they're traumatized, and this just happens all the time. And what can you do as a parent? You can't protect your child. You can't. You can't even provide for them. You have to live on aid. Now they've cut off UNRWA, too. That's another subject. So the trauma that happens is the terrorism that is the worst terrorism of all is state-sponsored terrorism. Because it's a state government and a military, it's not possible to terrorize. The firebombing of Dresden is terrorism. The firebombing of Hamburg, Berlin, Tokyo, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, these are all terrorist acts. But because it's a government, oh no, it's collateral damage. So why is it one rule for us and then another rule for the oppressed? This is hypocrisy. It doesn't fly in any real, meaningful, journalistic integrity. It would be easily destroyed, but if you control the media, if you control the money, if you control the politicians, you control academia, you largely control the corporations, you can do this. And only if you have representatives that are compromised could you maintain this lie as long as they have. But because of this slaughter, we see now an awakening that is thrusting the truth, the reality in people's faces because they're so arrogant. They believe they can do whatever they want. And they do treat the Palestinians as animals, worse than animals. I've seen it. I was saying genocide 15 years ago. Thank God we can discuss this now without the immediate anti-Semite BS.
There's an interesting context here, especially in Amsterdam, for two reasons, for double-sided reason, right? On one side, in the very city of Amsterdam during the Second World War, more Jews were killed than anywhere else in the world on a percentage level, right? Like 98%, something like this. So a very high percent of Jews in Amsterdam were killed because the Dutch cooperated with the Germans, yeah? On the other side, you have Dutch resistance to the German occupation, right? So you would think that here in the Netherlands, there is a clearer image on what it means to be suppressed, like the Irish, right? But at least in the government, and more we have to make this distinction between government and the people because there is a gap that's widening, right? So at least from government side, the Dutch government is completely aligned with Israel, of course, right? Trying to do damage control now after the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson just, I think, 3 days ago, right?
The criminality of our governments, the hypocrisy, the duplicity, that I won't dispute. Conveniently, I don't know, I mean, any critical analysis of history and the way the world works makes you realize real quick, we're living in 1984. We are living 1984. Truth speak.
And we don't have to revert back to opinion because according to international law, what happens are war crimes, right? So, one more topic I really would like to cover, March of Return. And I came across this again via a film on YouTube where you are in the midst of it, where the dead bodies were literally being carried next to you away. So tell us how you came there and what happened there.
So,
maybe first, what was it? March of Return, for those who don't know, what was that?
Every year, on the day that the Israelis celebrate their independence, on the other side, depending on what version of history you're into, they have what they call the Nakba, the great disaster, the catastrophe, where they were. Palestinians were put in ovens alive. This is not an exaggeration. And other heinous crimes were committed. So on that day, they have what's known as the Great March of Return. Now, according to law, international...
A march from where to where?
So it's a symbolic march because they can't march back to their land. It's been stolen. But if you believe in law, and I do, if you believe in law, the law is very clear. The Palestinian refugees have a right of return. What does that mean? To return to Gaza? No. To return to Jaffa, Haifa. These areas were Palestinian. This is a fact. So, according to law, what they do symbolically every year, on the day Israel is celebrating, they are actually educating the world, whether they listen or not is up to them, that according to the right of return, the law supports their ability to go back. They hold up keys. They hold up keys. These keys are the keys to the homes they used to have in Jaffa or Haifa or Tel Aviv.
They still have the paper deeds and the keys of the...
Many do. Many do, yes. And they have the key, so they carry the key. You know, and sometimes they have an actual physical key.
For the front doors of the houses.
A version of the key.
Yes.
So I was there at that time, and I think it's fair to say that I was also providing a level of sort of hope for the Palestinians, because the presence of us foreign nationals putting our lives on the line as well, reporting honestly when the media won't, it gives some hope, you know. So I think the numbers were very big that year. There was a lot of people there, and I was going, for sure.
I heard, I don't know if the number is correct, I heard about 10,000 people or more. So it's huge. It was not just a couple of hundred or so, it was really huge.
Yeah, and if we could look at the actual data of how many people were there that year as opposed to other years, it was definitely a bigger year. And so the way they did it was the gate.
That was in 2011, yeah?
Yes. There's a gate up in the north of Gaza. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of it, damn it. It's a well-known checkpoint, damn it. It's the one in the north. It's not the one in the south. Anyway, I had been there before anyway. I knew the area. In fact, I had done stuff with others where we go into the area that's, you know, the buffer zone. And I've been shot at. I've got video of, there's another one. I have video. You can hear the bullet going by. And I said, oh, that's a real bullet, man. Whoa. You can hear bullets like whiz by. They make a very distinct sound. You'll remember it. Anyway, so I was there on that day, and most of the people were marching only so far, because we were going literally right up to the very gate where they have a big 24-foot wall. They have guard towers, snipers. They have total control of this area. So I went all the way up to the front. We're not even 50 meters away from a sniper. They're looking down at us, and plus they're like one-way windows, so they can see us, but we can't really see them. But they had snipers in other areas, and they were pot-shotting here, there, and everywhere. Palestinians were climbing up an antenna, putting flags and getting shot, and so I'm documenting. I'm a proper journalist. Where's my frickin' Pulitzer Prize, you know? Real journalism is not rewarded. That's why I call them the prostitutes of propaganda, professional liars. Anyway, they were shooting, and invariably, like, people were praying, they were chanting. There was absolutely nothing violent on the Palestinian side, nothing. This was a nonviolent protest demonstrating their lawful right to return. And the Israelis started shooting, and before you know it, you know, somebody got shot near me. Keep in mind, I'm the only white guy there. None of the other media, none of them. This is a dangerous area we're in. They could take out any one of us. I said it in the video I did. I'm a Marine, and from that distance, I could easily hit someone between the eyes. If they stand still for just a few moments, easy, no problem. I could hit you from 300 meters, no problem. 500 meters, I could hit you. From 25, 50 meters, not a problem. So they're shooting people, and it's a mix, and I'm filming. It's a mix of shots that will debilitate you. Like, you know, if you hit somebody in a kneecap or in a major bone, like, that's not something that's just going to heal and you're going to be fine. That's going to debilitate you for life. So there's different ways that they do this. I know of shooting in the crotch. Your procreation is probably going to stop if you survive. Just really obscene things. I know of a Palestinian football player. He was on the national team. The Israelis got hold of him, and they shot him several times in both feet, ended his football career. So they do this kind of stuff. Like I said, they treat them, they're not even animals. They're subhuman. They have no conscience about it. They actually enjoy it, and we have many videos that show this. So they're shooting people, and I'm filming, and I remember while they were, you could hear the bullets going. You can hear it. You can hear them.
I saw it on the video clip.
And I'm like standing, and this is like, again, where people could say I'm crazy, or I've got a death wish, or I want to be a martyr, and it's like, no, none of those things are true.
Now that you mention it, death wish. If I saw this video, really, the bullets are flying, and they carry literally the people who got shot right next to you out of the masses. Yeah?
I think this is, you know, I have admired some great historic figures that were fearless, that did not flinch in the face of almost certain death. I have these qualities too. I don't flinch. When I'm engaged in something like this, and I've been on many things where the life is on the line, I'm focused like a laser. All I see is a mission. Anything and everything that I must do without compromising my soul and my spirit, I will do to carry out that mission. It's the Marine in me. We have a mission, achieve it, or die trying. So when I get in those zones, I'm very focused and I'm very fearless. And I also know that if they shoot me dead, there will be good that will come. How much? I don't know. But all of the work that I would have done previous to that would have been much exposed, like Tom Herndal or Rachel Corrie, like these people.
There was the lady who got bulldozed over, right? Yeah, alive, buried by Israeli bulldozer, protecting, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the sacrifice that these people have made, well, they made history, they're in history. You know, ask the parents, would they rather have their daughter back without the history? I'm sure they would, but they love their daughter, and, you know, as much as they miss her, they love her. And I admire that, you know, I admire that in people, and only so many of us have this kind of strength. So my job is to document this, to show the world, this is the truth. So I can't rightfully do that if I'm afraid and I'm running for cover. I gotta be there. And when other people are down, also I have the ability to inspire the Palestinians too, for a white man to be standing square, filming himself and calling the Israelis cowards. You're cowards, Israel. Not backing down. It helps embolden others. Not that they have a lack of courage. They do. They have plenty of it. But hey, we can feed each other in that regard. So I don't have a death wish. I love life. I'm a happy guy. I sleep well at night. I'm fit.
You said you want to document things, yeah, but documentation is only one side of the coin. Then you need to get it out there, yeah. And I saw you have a YouTube account with 70,000 subscribers, which is quite remarkable. But, and now please elaborate, what happened?
So this has become a lot more known in recent history, like shadow banning, censorship, cancel culture, all this stuff. They have been employing that stuff on me at least since 2003. At least. They've used virtually every means to do so. You know, if you look at Wikipedia, I'm linked to David Duke and white supremacy and blah, blah, blah. I've met David. I don't agree with him on many things. I agree with him on other things. Am I a white supremacist? Am I somebody who, no, but they lie. So anyway, yes, this channel, which, you know, if you look at the actual channel, I'm not a guy who ever put the time and made it like my business. Never. In fact, all that work I did.
Organically, yeah.
That stuff that you've seen, and I didn't ask a penny for any of that. I've done stuff for the Gypsies in the UK. I've done stuff for the Iraqis in Iraq. I've done stuff for the Palestinians in Palestine. How much did I make from any of this? Zero. How much money did it cost me? Quite a bit. How many risks did I have to take? A lot. Why was I doing it? For humanity, man, for a better world, to hand this over in a better state. Just to finish off on the YouTube thing, for 5 years I've not had access. Ever since I was poisoned, thrown in the Bangkok Hilton, tortured, and literally came back from the dead, resurrected and brain damaged. I have not been able to get access to that account, which an average video was getting tens of thousands of videos back then, some over 100K. And I wasn't even doing it like, you know, influencers who want to make a business out of YouTube. First off, they don't say what I say. Secondly, they do it regularly. They provide new content. They engage, like and subscribe. Just look at my stuff. I didn't do that. So that 70,000 would easily be 1 million if I put all my effort into that and had a team. Easy. And I'll do that, no problem.
So so Google still rejects you getting access?
I cannot prove that I am me. YouTube, they know everything about us. They know what you want to shop for. They literally, like, they will customize the ads to you. They know your personality profile, your consumption habits, economically. They know all that, but I cannot prove. Ken O'Keefe, the guy, kind of distinct looking, kind of unique guy, kind of unmistakable. I cannot prove to YouTube that I am Ken O'Keefe because I don't have a damn email or a phone that I had when I got that account started back in 2004 or 3, I think. So yeah, I find it funny. And all it tells me is that when you're being censored and lied about, they're slinging mud your way and you're doing something right. you're doing something right. If you're being embraced and they're not censoring anything, then you're harmless. And you're probably getting paid by the system. Piers Morgan. There you go. Impartial, right? Yeah, sure thing.
Good. Now we covered the points that I wanted to cover in regards to, I wanted to say your main achievements, although some people may have a different opinion in regards to that. Now I would like to conclude this discussion in a way that maybe characterizes you vis-a-vis what's going on in the world right now. Yeah. So on a geopolitical level, Middle East, Israel, I think let's focus on this area because you're most engaged there. Okay.
Yes, we are at a critical point in history. Irony. The irony is that the Israelis are their own worst enemy. Because of their arrogance, because they have operated with impunity, they attacked the USS Liberty in 1967. Most Americans don't know that.
Maybe it's worth, just to encapsulate a couple of seconds, Liberty, tell us.
So,
because I think it's really not known.
It really is, and in fact, the attack on the Mavi Marmara, where we were attacked, is like identical to where the USS Liberty was attacked. Absolutely fact. So, in 1967, there was the Arab-Israeli war, right? And, they have their narrative, which is BS, but whatever. There was an American spy ship called the USS Liberty, the most decorated ship in the fleet at the time. Now, this ship is basically defenseless. It's a spy ship, so it's got all the best communications, like it can listen in on everybody's conversation. And, of course, Israel's our best friend and ally, right? So here we are, the USS Liberty. It was the same time of year, too. It was, in fact, within a few days, the Mavi Marmara from the Liberty, literally, historically. So on a beautiful sunny day in the Mediterranean in June of 1967, this ship was basically spying and listening in on the conversations of the Egyptians who were backed by the Soviet Union, and this was a very dangerous time. But they were also hearing the communications of Israel, including communications that make clear they were committing massive war crimes in what they were doing. So we were hearing that too. Now the Israelis, literally on this day, sunny day, with American sailors and a few Marines, they would fly by so low that USS Liberty survivors like Phil Turney, who's a friend of mine, one of the survivors, and I know others.
Is he still alive?
Yes, he is. He would be a good guest for you. He would indeed. So the Israelis in marked jets with their Star of Remphan.
American jets, right?
Well, yeah, but they also had French jets, and they have American jets, and they've got their Star of Remphan / David on there. So we obviously knew that they were, Israelis. And the Americans on board were like, hey, and they waved. And literally the pilots waved too. Like you could see the pilot in the cockpit. That's how close they did their runs. So of course the Americans are like, excellent, cool. And then later on, shortly after, the new jets came. These ones were unmarked. So that's a war crime, by the way. If you are a military serving for a nation, you have to identify your weapons of war. So that's a war crime. But when they came back this time, they had a completely coordinated attack. Now, the justification for this attack, according to Israel, and this is the official history, they thought it was an Egyptian ship. Now this is beyond ridiculous. That ship, on a beautiful sunny day, clearly marked with the U.S. stars and stripes flying abreast, they thought it was Egyptian after flying so close that they were waving to the passenger, the crew. Oh, really? Oh, okay. So they come, and the coordinated attack is such that first thing they did, same thing with the Mavi Marmara, they hit all the communications. Now the Liberty was alone. This was a setup, and we know this. McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense, and Lyndon Baines Johnson, a traitor, had conspired at the executive level, so they sent that ship there alone. That ship is defenseless. It has like a 50 cal. That is not going to defend a ship against a jet attack and submarines and patrol boats. So anyway, they hit the communications. They cut communications. Same thing they did with the Mavi Marmara.
So to be specific, they fired their rockets at the boat, and they did this for several hours?
They hit it with rockets. They hit it with napalm. They hit it with 50 cal. And the amount of holes, thousands of rounds hit that ship. Thousands. And they took out the communications. So obviously the Americans were like, whoa, what's going on? You know, like, and because they were unmarked jets, they weren't sure what was happening. But then they could tell, they realized it was the Israelis. Of course, you can imagine what they're like, what the hell is going on? The ship is defenseless. It's a fascinating story, but they keep hitting it, and they hit it with thousands of rounds. They hit it with napalm. It was a heroic effort by the Liberty crew. One guy actually went and ran a wire and put it up and rigged communications, which they managed to get a message to the Sixth Fleet, which was some distance away, but if they sent a ship immediately, and jets. So the message got through to the Sixth Fleet, and this is the only time in U.S. history that a U.S. warship under attack was refused any defense. In fact, the jets had been launched and were heading to defend the Liberty. McNamara himself told the commander of the fleet to bring back the jets. He was basically getting ready to refuse the order of the Secretary of Defense, which is when Lyndon Baines Johnson, a traitor who should have been hung, told him, we're not going to embarrass our ally, America's ally, and basically consigned our own men to death. The actual point of this, and it is divine what happened here, so the jets were launched and then they were called back.
It's a fact, I know.
It's an absolute fact.
It's undisputed.
Indisputable fact. So the ship is hanging out to dry. They then came, like, it was heroic. The ship was listing badly. It had a gaping hole on the port side, was it? I believe port side.
It's on the left side, I know.
Yeah, left side. And it's listing, it's taken on water. So I've been on a ship. Like, you have to close. People were basically locked in.
The aim was really to sink this ship, yeah, and to blame it. Yeah.
The proof of this is the level of attack, and most importantly, they came with jets, they came with patrol boats, they came with submarines. Now, they fired torpedoes, 3, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4, 3, I think. Captain McGonigal, who was the captain of the ship, I'm a captain, so like this is not easy. To avoid torpedoes is not easy. It's
in a fully functioning boat, it's already difficult, yeah. Let alone
really, yeah. No, it's difficult, extremely difficult, especially a ship that's defenseless. Effectively, what are you going to use? 50 cal? You've got to use evasive measures to try and avoid the trajectory of the torpedo coming your way. It's not easy, but he managed to evade 2 out of the 3, but 1 hit. That's the one that blew that gaping hole, and they have to close out. That's when you call general quarters. You call general quarters, which means you seal every hatch. That means that anybody in the hatch that's been hit is going to be locked in. They're going to drown, and it's going to be nasty. And you can imagine how the sailors who are locking people in, can you imagine how that would make you feel? Obviously, it wouldn't feel good, would it? But it's what you got to do. So the ship was listing badly, and what they didn't know, and the Russians, they verified this, there was a Soviet ship that was in the area. And through a radio message, the Israelis realized, like, oh, there's a witness over there. That witness, they kept their mouths shut, the Russians, really. I mean, they said, but anyway. Bottom line is, they called the attack off. Now, even pilots, Israeli pilots, on record, said they questioned the order. Like, they did not know. Operational security, they were flying by. Many of them who were doing the flying didn't know until they were ordered, and they're like, "Can you repeat?" What? This apparently accidental attack on an Egyptian ship, absolute BS. The pilots themselves, who got guilt conscious, they've come out, and of course all that's suppressed to the best of their ability, but the facts are there for anybody who's serious about research and history. So the bottom line is, you could argue a divine act that ship didn't sink. Now, when the captain gave the abandoned ship order, which is the last thing you do, he literally called abandoned ship, and so they put life rafts in the water. If you abandon ship, you're going to need something to get into. What did the Israelis do? They fired on at least 3 of these big life rafts. They fired on them. This is a war crime, indisputably so. What's the point of that? You don't want any survivors, do you? You don't want no witnesses, no survivors. So that ship was intended to be sunk. Now, had that happened, do you know what would have happened in this world if that ship sunk?
An attack on Egypt. And we know there were already nuclear plants.
World War III. We came this close. They're doing it again now. We came this close. That doesn't even include the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's go there. We've come this close many times. We're in a bit of a coma here. We need to read the writing on the wall. So the ship, after launching life rafts, so you couldn't abandon ship, you couldn't do anything, and the captain managed to limp back towards the Sixth Fleet, at which point the U.S. government took total control. They diverted the ship to a station further away from the nearest station that made sense, because Sardinia, I think it was, because they could control the security, like they tightened it up. And it's a fascinating story. All of the crew members it's interrogation, I know interrogation techniques. So when they got there to this secret base, they were sat down, and then they had a trader's admiral who did the interrogations, and he acted like a father figure, like, oh, we're here to help you, we know you've been through a lot. Keep in mind, these guys have had to sail extra days on a ship with dead bodies that are rotting, and they were made to go in and remove the bodies. Like, the stench was so massive that guys couldn't even go in. Like, immediately they were vomiting from the stench of the dead bodies, and so they've gone through massive trauma. And here comes this admiral acting like a friend and a father figure, saying, just tell us what happened. So these guys spill the beans, and they all brought in isolation, so they all tell exactly, and then they're isolated, not allowed to talk to the guys who haven't been interrogated yet. After they say their piece, he then switches from good cop to bad cop. And he says, everything you've just said now, you will never utter these words again. Not to your crew members, not to your wives, not to your kids, not to nobody. And if you do...
And again, that's established. Yeah,
it is an established fact. They were threatened. Their careers and lives were threatened if they spoke. So they did. They remained silent for many years.
Exactly. And some of them spoke out not so long ago. That's why we know.
This is why we know.
Yeah. But you had a nice segue into the present, and maybe that's the last topic to discuss. Yeah. The pilots questioned the order. Yeah. And if we take this to October 7th, where we, as we know now from Israeli sources themselves, that Israeli helicopter pilots were ordered, instructed to shoot at anyone fleeing from this music festival, at least. Yeah? And there are pictures on social media of hundreds and hundreds of completely destroyed cars, which were burned out, charcoal bodies still inside. Yeah? Okay, we have some background noise. That were not caused by RGPs or light arms from Hamas. This must have been caused by Hellfire missiles from Apache US Apache helicopters. And again, we have Israeli pilot testimonies. We have reports in Haaretz and other Israeli publications stating for more and more witness that this is exactly what happens. And not only the helicopter pilots, but also tanks shot into houses where it was known that Israeli captives and Hamas fighters were to kill all of them. Yeah, that's called not the Samsung,
it's
doctrine,
the
Hannibal doctrine. That's where I want to go.
Yes.
So again, maybe from your perspective, I know you're quite knowledgeable about it. Maybe first, what's the Hannibal doctrine, for those who do not know, and comment on September the 7th in that context.
So the Hannibal Directive is an affirmation of what I know, and I thank Henry Kissinger for saying this one, a very famous Jewish man who recently departed, God curse him, and he said that the military are nothing but dumb animals to be used. I appreciate that honesty. I know that's true. I was cannon fodder. I was an idiotic, brainwashed kid who volunteered to be a mercenary for the bankers, and they will sacrifice me, and we've got 24 dead bodies from America coming back home now with coffins draped with flags. We're cannon fodder. The Israelis, as a general rule, they really do covet Jewish life on a completely different level. However, for operational purposes, the Hannibal Directive is such, they know that, for instance, these hostages, they're problematic. It gets the conversation going about, well, the Palestinian prisoners, including women and children that are being raped and have been for decades.
And rounded up.
I've met tons of guys in the West Bank and Gaza who have been in prison. Every single one of them has been tortured. Every single one of them. So it brings in all these issues, right? So they'd rather have dead Israelis and soldiers than captive ones. And also, if you get a lot of dead Jewish Israelis, then you have a good excuse for war. So the Hannibal Directive...
Just to underline this point, 2 or 3 weeks ago, those 3 Israelis were shot by Israeli snipers, despite doing all the right things. So they had a white flag, they had no clothing on purpose, so there was somebody who knew what he did to show the Israelis there are no bombs strapped, so they tried to avoid anything and still they got shot. I heard they were with food, they painted on the wall, "We are Israelis." They talked and they screamed in Hebrew to the soldiers, which were quite close, "We are Israelis," and still they were shot.
Yes. We're cannon fodder, and as a general rule, the Israelis have been a little bit more loyal to their own people because there are also consequences. Like, you don't really want too many dead Israelis, soldiers in particular, which again is part of the problem they're going through right now. It's not very popular. Anyway, the Hannibal Directive is that if you have civilians or military who are either at risk or for operational purposes become a liability, kill them. Like Israel killing Jewish Israelis, and it's called the Hannibal Directive. So that's an affirmation of what I know. I know we're cannon fodder too, I was too. They would happily sacrifice us. It would just mean we could have another war. Dead Americans equals war. So they'll sacrifice us, and that's their policy. The lies that were told by a parroting, prostituted media, 40 beheaded babies, remember that? The President of the United States repeated that lie, said he saw video proving this. So our president lied? Or was he just so stupid that he didn't realize? Come on.
Let's just be more specific. So the international press has even confirmed that there was a fake story. There's no dispute, nobody disputes today that was a story equal to the story when Iraq invaded Saudi Arabia. Kuwait, absolutely. Yeah. Testified that she saw Iraqi soldiers taking babies out of the incubators and smashing them on the floor. Today we know she was the daughter of the ambassador, and it was actually a US PR company who came up with the story. This happened.
And we have other important things like rape, cutting out of fetuses of pregnant women. One of the things that is positive out of this horrendous sacrifice that the Palestinians are paying is that historically, whatever Israel said was just accepted, repeated, and
this is changing now.
Now, finally, people are realizing. I've been saying, and I shall repeat, as long as I'm breathing and talking, I'll repeat it. The only time the Israelis are telling the truth is when they're openly declaring their genocidal intent.
Which they do.
This is honest.
Which they do right now.
This is honest. When they say they don't want war, we don't have a partner in peace, we supported the two-state, they reject, you're lying. Everything you say is a lie. Unless, of course, you're openly declaring your Zionist agenda of exterminating the Palestinians and eliminating the only claimant that actually has lawful title and the right to return. If they get rid of the Palestinians, boom, problem solved. When you think as a psychopath does, this is what you do. This is one other thing people need to understand. If you want to understand the world and you're a human being and you have a heart, it's all going to be very confusing. None of it makes sense. But if you enter the mind of a psychopath, a sociopath, a narcissist, so if you don't know what those things are, study it a bit. Now, look at it from that way. Is that a healthy human? No. No, that's not healthy. That's not healthy. That is an emotionally disturbed, mentally deranged person that thinks that we can act this way. And they're very dangerous, and they happen to fill the halls of Congress and parliaments around the world. If you are a moral man or woman who cannot be bought, they say everyone can be bought, everyone has their, no. There are some of us cannot be bought. Exception. We don't reward these people, we punish them. We reward the criminals, we reward the pedophiles, we reward those that will take the backhander, who can be bought for chump change, quite frankly. The Congress is full of that, traitors all. So this is the changing of the times that people are starting to realize that pretty much everything Israel says is a lie. Now they've become so cocky, so arrogant. We have never seen a genocide in history so openly declared. As a general rule, when you're committing genocide, you don't advertise that fact. Oh, we regret the loss of life. I could write the press releases for Israel better than they would. I know the game. I know how it works. And they're so arrogant. They really believe that, I mean, this is a fact. This is not my opinion. They subscribe to an ideology which isn't a spiritual ideology. You have atheist Jews. Do we have any atheist Muslims? If you don't believe in God, how are you a Muslim? Do we have atheist Christians? No. If you don't believe in God, how are you a Christian? But we have atheist Jews. I'm sorry, but isn't Judaism a religion?
There's this conflation now between Zionism and Judaism. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't believe in God, how is it possible that you can be an atheist Jew? Well, because perhaps atheism, that means you reject God. That doesn't mean you don't believe in God. It means you reject the idea of God. What's his name? Jordan Peterson is an example. Ricky Gervais is an example. We have many different atheists. The bottom line is this. The evidence to show that the Talmud, or the Old Testament, but especially the Talmud, in their own twisted minds, they genuinely believe that they are the chosen ones, and that the rest of us are what is called goyim, cattle. We are slaves. If we were able to discuss issues of history, facts, and we had real journalism, we wouldn't be so confused about these very simple principles. Americans suffer from supremacism. We're the greatest. Rah, rah. Freedom and democracy. That is a supremacist ideology. I am against all forms of supremacism. I do not care who applies it. Whether it is a white person, that doesn't mean you can't be proud. There's a difference. There's a difference between being proud as an Irishman, a white Irishman, and saying we're better than all of you. Or worse, not only are we better, but you're all slaves. This is their ideology, taught in the most grotesque of ways in the Talmud, to the degree that their own holy books state emphatically things like, 1, Jesus, they hate him. They hate Jesus. Jesus is boiling in hot excrement in hell. This is in the Talmud. Imagine something like that in the Quran or the Bible. Not the old Bible, the new one, the New Testament. 2, Mother Mary is a whore. In Islam, they love Mother Mary. They consider her to be the highest of the high in the female, literally. But the Jews, they hate her, and they hate Jesus as well. 3, in their holy book, they have the right to not only enslave us, but to rape our children It's a little bit of a blurry line there at 2. 2 years old, it's kind of a little bit discouraged, that one. But if they're 3 and older, being slaves, they get to rape us. It's in their holy book. Now, if I was lying about this, or I was wrong about this, do you know how much they would have crucified me by now? These are facts. Why don't you know it? Because they told you your history. And they tell you your news. They lie. But that lie, all of these lies, you tell one lie, now you got to tell 2 to cover the first one. Now you got to tell 4 to cover the second 2 after the first one. It just unravels. We're in the unraveling stage right now.
Netanyahu used the meanwhile infamous statement or reference to Amalek.
Yes.
And I had
honesty. There's honesty for you. This is their honest perspective.
An interview with Emeritus Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro 2 weeks ago. He does remarkably well, I have to say. And we discussed this, yeah. And a fact that, from supposedly the Jewish God, instructions come to annihilate enemies of Israel. Every woman, child, even the dogs and the donkeys, have to eliminate.
Crops.
Yeah. And Netanyahu made this as a reference in regards to the Palestinians. Yeah. Basically, he's calling for what you only can describe as genocide, right?
And I had a problem with the Old Testament, they call it, or the Torah, if you like. I always had a problem with it. When I knew of it, even as a young kid, God sounds like egotistical, genocidal maniac in that book. Really, seriously. But I realized only later, and that kind of threw me off religion, which I confused with spirituality. 2 very different things in the modern world. I'm a very spiritual man. I was raised Catholic. The Catholic Church has been raping choir boys and others in Ireland and all over, and covering it up. Well, can I be a proud Catholic if that's the bishops and cardinals? These are holy men? Raping? No. But does that mean that I don't believe in God or I'm going to reject God? No. It means that religion has been co-opted, subverted, infiltrated, and turned into anti-religion. And it has become so pervasive that you have most everybody is secular at this point. In this country, in England, Europe as a whole. So they detach us from source and God by perverting religion, which makes all of us who can think reject religion, but we confuse religion with spirituality. If you don't believe you have a soul, God bless you and God help you. You do have a soul. It is eternal, but you can literally sell your soul. You can. Israelis do that. In fact, they chose the opposite side. There is evil. Surely we can all agree there's evil. Some would call it Lucifer or Satan. I know this much. The proof that the church of Satan exists and is alive and well, and their prized possession, what does Satan want? Basically the opposite of God. God wants, He gave us everything we need to live in abundance. This is a beautiful dominion we're in here. He loves us, and He gave us free will. He gave us the choice. That's up to us. Maybe that's a reflection or proof of eternal spirit. There will be a cost with what you choose to do with your free will. So, this reality, all of this truth, I love Jesus, I love Him. And my favorite quote of all time, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. If you believe lies, you will never be free and easily duped. This is the world we've been living in for too long. 2024, as far as I'm concerned, justice. Justice.
On that note, 2 things. First of all, is there any topic that we didn't cover that you feel we should? And then I want to know what's the story with your $5 bill.
Yes. Okay, well, the $5 bill will allow me to tie into what I would like to say. Now it's 2 $5 bills here. So this is the one, if you go to the currency exchange and go get yourself a $1 bill, it's going to look like this one. Now, you can take a shot of this, show it on the screen later, but the 2 things that are important to note about this is just a normal modern dollar in the modern age. It has a green seal. It's relevant for a reason. And it also says 3 words up here. Those words are Federal Reserve Note. Okay. What is the Federal Reserve? Well, first off, it ain't federal.
And it has no reserves.
There's no reserves. And it's actually a private bank. It's a private bank owned and controlled by the Rothschilds. This is an instrumental part of communism, by the way. You have one money supplier. They have a total monopoly on the creation of money. They do it at interest, usury. Remember Jesus? He had a problem with the money lenders. In fact, he got real pissed. Jesus was a fighter, man. He did not like that. How are you using this temple, a holy place, to do your usury business? So, this is a Federal Reserve note. That's a private bank. Every single dollar that is issued, every single one, comes at interest. So, the amount of money in circulation is not payable. We can never pay the debt, ever. They use this system to give loans to little, quote, third world nations for infrastructure that makes big developers lots of money and the corrupt politicians in these countries lots of money. And it rapes the countries and indebts them. So they're owned by the IMF or the World Bank. They'll never be able to repay the debt. Now, remember, Green Seal, Federal Reserve, private Rothschilds, bank, debt, never can be paid back, dollar. This one is different. Here we have a red seal. Now this was issued in an interesting year, 1963. What was happening in 1963? I think there was a president. Oh, I think he's Irish, actually. Oh yeah, I think everybody in the world knows this guy. I think pretty much everybody loves him. Certainly Marilyn Monroe did, since he liked to have affairs, which I'm very much against. But he was a stooge. He did all the things that he was meant to do. But he had a moment of clarity and awareness that changed him. The Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Soviets were going to put silos in Cuba when we were already putting nuclear silos in Europe. Okay. So, tit for tat. If you're going to put them over there right next to us, we're going to put them right next to you. Kennedy got real bad advice from the so-called intelligence services, in particular the CIA. And that bad advice led us to the brink of World War III. To the brink. In fact, the world was waiting on bated breath for the news. Literally. Everybody's forgotten that now. Literally. And when that happened, I believe that was the Kennedy moment, where he was like, I get all these perks. I live in the White House. I'm an adulterer, so I get to have sex with Marilyn Monroe. Everybody loves me. He was a great speaker. And by the way, he traveled.
I'm waiting. I'm sitting at the edge of my chair to figure out what the heck is about this red seal.
So when he brought the world to the brink of World War III, something flipped. Something flipped. He got real upset at the CIA. And he also didn't like Israel, what it was doing. And at the time that he issued this, he did several things.
So this is an official?
This is a 1963 issue.
So it's not someone playing around with his printer. This
is
an official?
No, okay. I have several of these. These will be collector's items. Trust me, they'll be worth a lot of money someday. Please don't take all my notes. I want to buy some more too. Anyway, the red seal is important. Remember, green seal, red seal. The more important thing, aside from 1963, President John F. Kennedy, up here, oh wait, it doesn't say Federal Reserve note. It says United States note. That means the U.S. government, which every government has the ability to do. Canada used to do it. Germany did it. A whole bunch of other places did it. And guess what? They got really good results. You know what they did? They managed to go ahead and keep any debt at a very reasonable and payable level. Now, this United States note, that's not at interest. It's not a private bank. And JFK was dead within 6 months of issuing this $5 note. We could solve the problems that we face right now. I have said over and over, like a broken record, the head of the snake is the financial system. The reason why they hate people like Gaddafi,
And
Saddam Hussein, John F. Kennedy, and the last one, a man named Adolf Hitler. He outlawed usury. Jesus didn't like usury either. Now, the history tells us that we shouldn't entertain anything possibly good about this man. But I'll tell you what I know I like and I respect. He ended the usury that now translates to, I don't know what it is here in the Netherlands. In the UK, I think it's like 6-7 trillion pounds. In America, we've just hit $34 trillion. First off, even if we ventured to pay back the debt, there isn't enough money in circulation to even pay it back. So who are we in debt to? They want to say it's China. They want to say it's this. They want to say everyone, but
Thanks.
the Federal Reserve Bank. And who owns that? It's a private bank. Am I anti-Semitic for pointing out that the Rothschilds-controlled Federal Reserve Bank has indebted not only America, the Bank of England? Who owns that? The Rothschilds have owned that since the 1700s.
Okay. Ken, it was a fascinating journey talking to you. I actually lost track of time. We have had quite a discussion, and I'm 100% sure we could go another 2 hours at least. Yeah, I cannot say it differently. Yeah? It was a fascinating journey. There are many people who do not agree with you. There are arguments to that, but you are a man of experience, yeah? And you have committed your life to a cause. And you are doing this now since 20, 30 years, I don't know how long, consistently. Yeah? You put virtually your own life at risk for others with no other ulterior motives, right? So I think there are very few who can claim that. Okay, so it was my privilege talking to you, and as in all my interviews of that sort, I do not claim neutrality because I cannot see what happens in Gaza right now in any other way than a string of academics that I have interviewed see too. This is a war crime and this is genocide. Okay, and you have said this 15 years ago. You were heavily criticized and attacked based on it, but slowly the world is waking up. And this has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, which is now conflated purposefully with Zionism. And if anyone have a doubt that this is not the case, watch my interview with Emeritus Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. Okay? Ken, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
God bless.
Thank you.